Happy New Year, everybody. I am so glad to be here, and I hope all of you had a wonderful holiday season. With a new year comes new projects, and for those projects, I'm digging into my craft stash. I even pulled out something from my booth that hasn't sold, so I am giving it a new look. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you're new. My name's Melissa. Watch till the end and let me know which one is your favorite. But for now, let's go ahead and give these items a makeover. All right, for this project, I have a transfer that I have really been wanting to do something with. I have this scrap piece of wood, but it is cut at an angle. So I am gonna have to sand it so that it's more level. So that's what I'm gonna do first. This probably would have been easier if I had set this down on a table, but I've been trying to clean out my garage for an upcoming video. So if you have not subscribed, go ahead and do that now. So sanding was not working, so I got out my miter box and saw, and I started sawing it. My husband had to finish it up for me, and finally got it leveled. So now I'm just sanding it off, making it smooth, kind of rounding the edges a little bit. Once I got it sanded down, I wiped it off really good, and this is what it looks like. And I'm gonna paint it with this Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and I'm gonna paint the whole thing. And I do give this 2 coats of the chalk paint, and I do, on the second coat especially, I do spray my brush with a mister every time I put paint on it, because it starts getting a little bit thick, and I'm running out of paint, so the paint was getting a little bit thick as well. But I did do that on the second coat. Now that I have this painted with 2 coats, I am going to, before I use the transfer, I'm going to use a piece of music. And this is a book that I thrifted, and it says Masters of the Keyboard. And so I just found a piece of music that I thought was kind of light and small. And so I'm going to just tear this out. And I'm gonna see about where it would need to go. And then I'm just gonna kind of do like this. Actually, it looks like it's gonna tear pretty easily, yep. But I'm going to, look how easy that's tearing. Wow, it's an old book. I'm gonna actually tear a little bit smaller than the board because I want it to kind of be inside the board. So I'm just gonna tear it a little bit smaller before I Mod Podge it on. I put 1 coat of Mod Podge, and I did dry it with my heat tool. Now that the Mod Podge is dry, I am going to put this piece of music down. So I'm just gonna place it where I want it on the board. Once I get it set into place, I'm gonna lay my parchment paper over it, and then I use my mini heat press, and I go over the top of it, and this reactivates that Mod Podge. And this way of doing it means no wrinkles. I like doing it this way. So once you get that Mod Podge reactivated, it is stuck down on there. And then once that kind of cools off, then I'm gonna go over it again with a coat of Mod Podge. When I do a project like this, I do like to put the Mod Podge on kind of at a crisscross, because it just makes it look less brush stroked. I let that dry completely, and once it is dry, then I go over it with that transfer that I have been dying to use, and it is this little Ballerina. Now this is from a Redesign with Prima Christmas set, transfer set, but I have been keeping her. I didn't want to use her for Christmas, so I've been keeping her. So I'm going to cut the stars off and then start transferring her down. You just take the backing off, you lay the transfer onto your project. I like to rub my transfer with my hand first, or with the stick first, and then I just find one corner and I start pulling up as I rub down with the stick that's provided with each transfer set. And sometimes I do use my thumbnail to get into the little more detailed areas, but once you're finished with that, you just take that vellum and you go over it one time just to make sure that there's no air bubbles, and then you go over it with a coat of Mod Podge. I could have probably done this with clear wax, but for some reason I just went ahead and did it with the Mod Podge. But you just want to make sure that you seal those transfers in on your project. The next thing I want to do is I need to seal in the chalk paint. So I'm going to do that with some clear wax, but I am not going to wipe off from around the front. I'm not going to wipe off the excess from around the front until after I have used some antique wax, because I want the front, well, actually, I want it to be antiqued all the way around. So let me go ahead and just put the clear wax on the whole thing, except the bottom, because I do need to stand it up. And then I'll go in with some antique wax. And then when I do the antique wax, I pretty much just I just go over it until I kind of play around with it until I get the kind of look that I want. I don't want it to look super grungy, but I also want it to look vintage and aged. So I am going to, let's see, I'm going to try it first with a baby wipe, and then we'll go from there. I may do all around the edges first and just kind of put that around there, around these edges down here. See, I'm just kind of spotting it on. Dabbing it. And then what I'll do is I'll use the clean edge and then just kind of start dabbing it, pushing it inward a little bit. And that way it kind of fades out toward the center so it looks aged all over. I hope that makes sense. But I want it to blend. I don't want it to, you know, just look like it just ended. And then I will just go in and wipe it back until I get the look that I want. And here is what this one looks like. I just love this little ballerina. I think she's so cute. and putting her on music just makes sense. And so this is just a perfect little shelf sitter. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one. I've had this box in my stash for quite a while, so it's time to do something with it. And I'm not gonna paint the inside of it because I kind of like the look of it, but I paid $1.50 for it because I got it on Wacky Wednesday. But I just want this to have a softer look. And so to do that, I am gonna use this ballet slipper. It's the Waverly chalk paint, but I'm not a real fan of how pink it is. So I'm gonna mix it with some white. And this is the Waverly chalk paint in, this one just says white, but I think it's also labeled Snow White. So I just mix it up and mix it up real good. And then I'm gonna start painting it. I start with the lid. I'm gonna leave that little knob on top and do something with that later, but I just get the top painted, and then I am gonna start on the box. And when I start on the box, I realized the brush I was using was too big to get around those little feet. So I got a smaller brush and I'm just going around the edges. Now when I turned it over to take the stickers off, I did notice that the legs are broken, but they're not broken off. They're a little wonky, but I think I'm just gonna leave them like that, but I'm gonna repair them. So I'm gonna use some wood filler in the parts that are broken and let that dry, and then sand it to make it smooth so that it looks like one piece. And somehow my camera got turned around while I was doing this, but I just wanted to show you how I filled this in with the wood filler. And so now I'm just gonna let it dry, and then I'm gonna sand it, and hopefully that will fix the problem. I did let that wood filler dry overnight, so now I'm just going in with a little finger sander and sanding it the best I can. And once I get that done, then I can go in and I can finish painting the rest of the box. Now, like I said, I'm not painting the inside of the box, but I do definitely have to give this 2 coats, but 2 coats covered it really well. Now that the paint is dry, the next step is to highlight those details. So to do that, I'm going to use the Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and my little chip brush, and I'm going to dip it ever so lightly in the paint, and then I'm going to just dab the excess, some of the excess off on a shop towel, and then I'm just going to lightly go over the kind of rims and the details of the box that are raised. And so that's going to give it more of a two-tone effect, and you're going to see those details a lot better. The next thing for this is I'm going to put some gold on all of the pieces like that I didn't paint. So this top and then the feet of the other item or the box. So I'm gonna use the antique gold rub and buff. To apply it, I'm just using a small little paintbrush, and I would advise you using small little paintbrushes that you don't mind throwing away. It's a lot easier to just go buy a new one than trying to clean the brushes with this rub and buff on it. But anyway, I just used the little brush to apply that, and then I put it around the edges, and then this project is finished. Now, I did forget to go in and spray it with a sealer, so I will do that, but I'm just gonna use a spray matte sealer and finish it off and seal all that chalk paint in. But I think this turned out really pretty, and it's so dainty, so let me know what you think about this one in the comments. And by the way, I do have a whatnot shop, so if you're interested in any of these, let me know and I can put them in my whatnot shop. I always have Dollar Tree items in my stash. So for this project, I'm using these two items that were in my stash, and they came from the Dollar Tree. And I'm gonna put them together, and I'm just gonna make a little riser that is perfect for jewelry or perfume or whatever. But I'm gonna blend them in and make them look like one cohesive piece. But I do want to paint this with the plaster color chalk paint. And I need to see where this stand is gonna go, because I don't want, I wanna attach it to raw wood. So I kind of have it in place, and then I'm gonna paint around where the base of that candlestick goes. And then I'm just gonna paint the rest of this little wood tray with that chalk paint, and I'm only giving it one coat since this is a really light wood anyway. It really only needs one coat. After that is dried and had some time to cure, I'm gonna put a transfer on the inside of the tray. And this is a transfer that I get from Amazon, and is from Timeless Designs on Amazon. So I'll put a link to it in the description box. But I just think that these flowers with this script behind it is so pretty. So I'm just gonna use one of these in the center. So what I do is I just turn it over, and I'm going to kind of crease the transfer where I need it to be cut, and then I'm going to cut around it. It's still a little too big, so I just kind of have to keep cutting until it fits in there perfectly. I don't want anything coming up the sides of that tray. So I just keep cutting little slits until I get it to the size I need it to be. Then I take off the backing, lay it down, and then start transferring it over using that stick. This one was really easy to transfer down. And now I'm gonna move on to the candlestick part. Now, it is a pretty color, but it's very one-dimensional. So I am gonna use some of the Rub and Buff, but this is in the Spanish copper. And I'm gonna use a small little brush, and I'm gonna put it in the creases of the candlestick. I'll also be using the Rub and Buff in the antique gold, just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension. Honestly, the antique gold is almost the same color as the candlestick already, but the antique gold Rub and Buff is going to help me kind of smooth out the Spanish copper, because that Spanish copper is pretty harsh. I used a paper towel to kind of smooth it out a little bit, get out any kind of clumps that were in the creases. Then I'm gonna use, I do use a glove, and I'm gonna use that antique gold just to kind of go over the top where the creases are, and then just kind of using some of it on other areas of the candlestick around the edges. And this just kind of smooths out that Spanish copper and kind of makes it more blended. It blends it in better. Next, I'm gonna go in with some E6000, put it on the rim of the candlestick, and then I'm going to place it down in the center of that area that was not painted, and press it down, and then put something heavy on top and let that set. And I'm pretty sure I let this set overnight just to make sure it bonded really well. All right, it is glued together. So now what I'm gonna do is I am gonna go over the tray part with some Waverly Clear Wax. And even though this is sealed in, wait, did I seal that in? No, I didn't seal it in because I'm gonna use the clear wax. So I am just gonna put the clear wax on the whole thing. And I'm not gonna wipe any back. This wood is pretty dry. So I'm just gonna leave it on because I'm also gonna go over the tray part with a little bit of antique wax just to give it some dimension, darken it up a little bit, and then I'm gonna do one final thing. So yeah, this is soaking up this wax like nobody's business. So I will wipe back the excess on the transfer, just because that's obviously not soaking it up like the wood is. But anyway, just gonna finish doing this, and then I'm gonna work that antique wax into some of the corners, on the edges, just because I want to darken this up a little bit, make it a little bit richer before I do the final thing. And as in the previous project, or one of the previous projects, I just kind of work with this until I get it to look the way I want it to look. I start off a little bit darker. I smooth it out with a shop towel, with baby wipes. I even go in sometimes with a clear wax brush and just kind of smooth it out even more and wipe back even more. I just kind of play around with it until I get it the way I want it to look. Now to tie in the gold on the base, I do want to use some Rub and Buff, and this is in the antique gold, and I'm just going to put it along some of the edges, not too heavy, but just enough where you can see the gold and it just kind of ties it in. I really like the way this turned out. I wasn't sure how it was gonna look with the wood base and then the gold bottom, but I think using the gold Rub and Buff around the edges and then just darkening some of it up with the antique wax really helped. But I think this is so pretty. This would be so pretty on a vanity to hold your jewelry. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments. This is a stool that I got at a garage sale, and I put it in my booth as is because it's cute, but it is geared for children the way it's painted, and it hasn't sold. So I'm gonna give it a makeover to where it is a little more elegant looking and just a little softer looking. So the first thing I'm gonna do is give it a scuff sand because the paint is kind of raised a little bit, so I just wanna make sure I have a flat surface. Now this is one project when I'm finished with it. This one's not going on Whatnot just because it's so big and bulky. It'll be too hard to ship, but it will be for sale in my vendor booth. Now because there are so many bright colors on here, I do want to spray it with some Zinsser shellac, and hopefully that will curb any bleed through. Now if you've never used the shellac, it does block out the color, but it will cause the crazing, which is fine. But now I'm gonna paint this, and I'm gonna start on the underneath side just to make it easier on myself, but I'm gonna paint it with the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I did have to go buy a new bottle of this. I do get mine from Walmart, but I think you might be able to order it from Amazon. If you can, I'll link it in the description box. But I do go over all of the underneath parts on this stool and with one coat, and then I start going over the sides and then eventually the top. Now you'll be able to tell that the one coat is definitely not going to cover this. Can't really tell right here, but in person, well, you can tell on the side, you can kind of still see ladybugs. Once it started to dry, the paint was starting to come out more. But once I got the second coat on, it covered it really well. So 2 coats was definitely all I needed. And I wanted to try to limit too much crazing and crackling, so I just let it air dry. I didn't use a heat tool. Sometimes if you use a heat tool, it will cause it to crackle even more. But once I have the 2 coats on there and it is dried completely and I've let it cure for a while, probably 2 or 3 hours, I went ahead and I'm going to use this Sunlit Aviary MIDI transfer from Redesign with Prima. Now we do carry Redesign with Prima products in the store where I have my vendor booth. So if you're local, you can come in and check us out. We're Birds and Berries in Gonzales, Louisiana. But here I am putting, this particular transfer had 2 of the same kind of like floral swags. I love this blue and yellow, and I figured it would be pretty for spring. It's not quite the pink, you know, romantic-y kind of soft, but it is very springy, and it is very pretty and very soft. And so I'm just putting the 2 swags on the steps, and then I do go in and put some transfers on each side. There are 2 of these transfers, which was great, so I put 1 on each side, and then I also put a little flower in the corner. Now this corner is not going to have a blue flower, it's going to have a yellow flower, but it's fine. So anyway, got all the transfers on there. And now I want to show you the beautiful crazing. Now if you don't like this crazing chippy kind of look, then don't use that Zinsser shellac. But look at the crazing, it's so pretty. So I do want to enhance that crazing, but before I spray it with a sealer, I do want to take it outside, and I'm using my orbital sander, and I'm going over it with a 220 grit sandpaper and sanding around the edges just to kind of distress it a little bit. Now, if you don't like the distressed look, don't use the Zinsser shellac, and you don't have to sand your project. I didn't sand it too terribly much. Since I plan on going over this with a wax to highlight the crazing, I want to keep the colors, so I'm going to spray it with the Rust-Oleum Matte Clear Enamel. My sealer is dry, and so now I want to use some dark wax, and I'm using this Bear, and I think this is like the walnut color, but I'm going to use this. Now this is scary, even for me. I've done this a couple of times, but it's still kind of scary because it's so beautiful right now, but I do want to show off that crazing. So you're just going to take that wax and you're going to rub it onto your project. This looks very scary, and my heart honestly was kind of beating fast when I was doing this, because I was like, oh my gosh, I hope this comes off, I hope this works, but it really does. So you just now work in small sections, I will say that, but I'm working in small sections. There are different kind of dark waxes that might be easier to work with, but this one's pretty thick, so I just put it on one step at a time, and then I'm gonna use the part of the shop towel that doesn't have anything on it, after I get it on there, and then I start kind of wiping back as much excess as I can. Now you can still see it's still pretty brown, but then I take a baby wipe and I start wiping it back with that baby wipe. Keep baby wipes on hand. They are wonderful to have when you're crafting, but just take that baby wipe, and it may take 2 or 3 per step or per area, but that's okay. You get it because it'll get you down to the color where you want it to be. So I just keep wiping this with a baby wipe, getting back as much of the dark color as I want. And you can kind of still see the top step compared to the bottom step. It does change it a little bit, but it's not so stark. And when you see the crazing, oh my goodness, let's go ahead and take a look. It's so beautiful. Look at that. Look at that crackle, and that dark wax down in that crackle is so good. So I love the way it looks. Some people may not like this, and that's fine. That's their choice. But I love it. I think it's so pretty. So anyway, I did this with the rest of the piece. Again, working in small sections at a time and wiping back with that baby wipe. Now, I will say I didn't show too much of this just because I knew my video was getting pretty long. But on the inside parts, I didn't have as much crackle, and I didn't need it to show really because it's underneath. So I just used some clear wax. I put some clear wax on the inside. I took dark wax on a baby wipe and wiped it on there just so it would kind of be the same tone. But this is how it turned out. I mean, I think it's still the same color, but it's such a different look, and it's so pretty, and I love the crazing. Let me know what you think about it. Again, this will be for sale in my vendor booth. We're in Gonzales, Louisiana. It's Birds and Berries Home Store. So if you're local, you can come buy it. But I just think that this is just beautiful. And then here is more of that crazing or crackle. I keep saying crazing. The crackle on the sides, oh, is so pretty. Do you like crackle or not? I love, look at that. It's so pretty. Let me know if you like it or not. Before we take one final look at all of the projects, of course, I have to start off the new year and end the video with a Bible verse. And this Bible verse comes from Psalms chapter 27, verse 4. And it says, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." I love this verse. I can just envision it. I hope that it blesses you in some way today. I certainly hope that you enjoyed the video today. I appreciate you being here. And if you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave me a crown emoji. And in the comments, let me know which one of these 4 projects was your favorite. Unfortunately, I did not reach my subscriber goal in 2025, but this year I hope to reach 14,000 subscribers. So I would love it if you would help me reach that goal. Share this video with some friends, or if you're new to my channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button. I love doing thrift makeovers, home decor, shopping hauls, all the fun things. So if that's something that you love too, then go ahead and click the subscribe button and click the bell button so you're notified when I upload new videos. And everybody give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to check out my links to whatnot. And if you want to see more videos like this one, then go ahead and check out the boxes that you see on the screen right now. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.